It happened when I was around 13 years old, and to this day, I still have no explanation for the bizarre events of that night. My family and I lived in the same modest house in Oklahoma that we still call home today, and our area frequently experiences severe thunderstorms, being located in the heart of Tornado Alley. I had a habit back then of sleeping downstairs in my parents' bedroom whenever storms rolled through, since I'm such a heavy sleeper. My dad worked late a lot of nights, so I would just camp out in his big empty bed with the dog to keep me company until he got home. That way, I could be safe from potential tornadoes while my mom kept watch upstairs. The night this incident took place was a stormy one, all right, with howling winds, booming thunder, and lightning flashing outside. I was lying in my dad's bed around 12:45 a.m., just watching silly YouTube videos on my phone to pass the time until I felt tired. Suddenly, over the noise of rainfall pounding the roof, I heard the unmistakable deep bass thumping of my dad's souped-up sports car pulling into our driveway. I lived in a tiny rural town where everyone knew each other, and no one else had a ride quite like my dad's with a customized stereo system he had installed. Assuming he must have come home early from his late shift, I gathered up my pillow and told Casey planning to head upstairs so he could have his room to himself. But after waiting a few minutes listening for him to come inside, I hadn't heard the garage door open. Puzzled, I went over to the window facing the driveway, expecting to see his car parked out front. But strangely, the driveway was empty. No car in sight. I peered out into the dark, rainy night, wondering if I had just imagined the loud bass sound over the storm. Or maybe I mistakenly thought it was my dad, when it was really just music from a vehicle passing by on the nearby highway. After all, he had told me earlier he wouldn't be home till around 2 a.m. I went back and sat on the bed feeling kind of unsettled, while Casey curled up again comfortably. But almost immediately after lying down, I realized I could still hear a faint rhythmic booming, like bass notes pulsing steadily. It wasn't just my imagination. The sound was definitely still coming from our driveway area somehow. I started getting spooked, but eventually convinced myself it was probably just someone parked randomly outside our place, music still thumping. That happened pretty often with cars passing through town late at night. Eventually, I tuned out the noise and dozed off lightly. Sometime later, maybe 30 minutes, I was startled awake again by the unmistakable sound of my dad coughing loudly. It sounded muffled but very close, like it was coming from our garage, which shared a wall with his bedroom. Relief washed over me, thinking he must have come home while I was napping. But my relief quickly turned back to unease when I realized I hadn't heard the loud creaky garage door opening at any point. The coughing sounded like it was coming from right inside the closed garage. Now I was really freaked out. I stayed frozen in the bed, listening intently over the noise of wind and rain. Had I just imagined that familiar coughing too? But then a few minutes later, I heard my dad's voice softly calling my name from somewhere upstairs. Brittany, Brittany. My blood turned to ice. That was no illusion. There was someone or something inside our house mimicking my dad's voice. I had no idea what to do. I stared wide-eyed at Casey, still snoozing contentedly beside me, oblivious. Part of me wanted to bolt upstairs towards my dad's voice and find out who was there. But my instincts screamed no, stay hidden. So I just laid there barely breathing, listening to the storm rage on outside. Eventually exhaustion overtook me again, and I passed out from fear and adrenaline overload. I woke up confused around 4 a.m. to silence and sunlight peeking through the curtains. Still groggy, I ran to the window and saw with relief that my dad's actual car was now parked in the driveway. The storm had passed. I bolted upstairs to find my dad in the kitchen. Breathlessly, I told him everything that had happened overnight. The disembodied car bass, the voice calling my name. My dad's bemused expression as I recounted my bizarre experience just heightened my frustration. I knew he was thinking I had dreamed the whole thing. But I insisted over and over something real had mimicked him in our house during the storm while I was downstairs alone. His smiles and pats on my head to placate me only left me more unsettled. I knew what I heard. As I grabbed Casey and steered clear of the garage that day, I couldn't shake the terrifying thought. What might have happened if I had gone upstairs toward that voice in the darkness. In the years since that bone-chilling night, I've never been able to explain the strange events that played out while I huddled downstairs, trying to sleep through the storm. My family still lives in that same house, and I've never heard or experienced anything like it again. But an uneasy feeling lingers. No matter how many rational explanations I come up with, I just know what I heard. A presence was there in the house with me, calling my name in my father's voice. And I can't help feeling a chill run down my spine, imagining what could have happened if I had gone to investigate that entity in the darkness. Some mysteries are better left unsolved. Although it happened quite a while back, probably over 15 years ago now, the memory is still vivid in my mind. I was in my later high school years and home alone one weekend night in the modest attached row house where I grew up. My parents were out of town at a wedding and staying overnight at a hotel, and my older brother Mike worked a night shift job. At the time, my family lived in a tight-knit but rapidly deteriorating neighborhood in a major East Coast city. Blue-collar and working class for generations, over the past decade, it had started a steep decline as crime and poverty infiltrated. But my parents were stubbornly loyal to the place they had called home their whole lives. As a teenager, I was kind of a loner. Not an outcast or anything. I had friends from the neighborhood and played sports. But I'm naturally introverted, so I relished rare weekends like this when I had the house entirely to myself. I looked forward to enjoying my usual routine of heading out solo, playing video games on the big screen, ordering a full late-night takeout feast just for me, and falling asleep watching anime on the couch. My main companion on these laid-back nights was Rufus, our loyal old hound dog. Rufus was a beagle we had rescued from the pound when I was about 10 years old. He was an affectionate dog but very mellow and subdued, content just to snooze at your feet or beg for scraps from the dinner table. He almost never barked or got riled up. Just a gentle, mild-mannered pup happy to tag along with our family and lap up any morsel of affection. By the night of this incident, Rufus was probably about 12 years old, up there for a beagle. His muzzle had gone fully grey, he was getting a bit creaky in the joints and preferred napping all day to playing. But he still delighted in our company, especially when it meant the possibility of getting to lick an empty plate or bowl. He was the most benign, docile creature you could imagine. Or so I thought. Around 1 a.m. that night, I had just polished off an entire extra-large pizza and was starting to doze off during a movie when I heard a loud bang coming from outside. In the city, all kinds of noise erupts on the streets at odd hours, so I didn't think much of it at first. But Rufus's head instantly perked up from where it had been resting in my lap. The hair on his back stood on end, and he stared fixedly at the door leading to our basement. He seemed unnerved. As I soothingly assured him it was nothing and stroked his head to calm him down, my eyelids grew heavy again. A minute later, bang. This time the noise was closer and more jarring. Before I'd even had time to react, Rufus leaped off the couch with astonishing speed and agility for his age. Barking wildly, he charged straight for the basement door and started frantically scratching at it, baring his teeth. I was stunned. I had never seen our mellow senior dog act remotely aggressive before. But his snarls made the hair on my arms stand up, sounding like they came from a German shepherd, rather than this mild-mannered beagle I knew so well. Something had clearly freaked him out big time, and that immediately put me on high alert. Heart starting to pound, I could now make out persistent banging coming from our seldom-used basement door that led to the back alley. That entrance was ancient, rusty, and extremely heavy. It took serious effort to tug it open even with a key. The reverberating booms and Rufus's frenzied reaction told me someone was trying with all their might to get inside from the alley. Living in a dicey neighborhood, the unspoken code was that anyone who tries to break in but gives up upon finding a door locked probably just wanted your possessions. But someone desperately and forcefully attempting to enter despite obstacles almost certainly had more malicious intent. Fear spiked through me as I realized Rufus seemed to instinctively understand the same. This was a critical threat. I rushed upstairs to my bedroom and grabbed the solid wood baseball bat I kept by my bed just in case of situations like this. Then I hurried back down to the basement door, bat raised and ready to confront whoever or whatever was on the other side. In retrospect, fleeing and calling the cops would have been smarter than trying to handle this myself. But I was a cocky, macho teen who felt invincible, and I was riled up by Rufus' aggression into protective fight mode. As I approached the basement landing, Rufus brushed past me, every hair on his body raised, baring his teeth and emitting the loudest, most menacing barks I had ever heard from him. Reaching the door, I could hear a man's muffled voice on the other side saying, "Ah, damn it," and the banging ceased. Rufus' ruckus had apparently scared him off, but I wasn't taking any chances. I waited at the ready beside the door with my bat for the rest of the night until my brother got home around dawn, never letting my guard down. When I told Mike what happened, he went to check out the basement entrance and found the entire heavy wooden door now dislodged from its frame and ready to topple inwards. This guy had been just moments away from gaining entry if Rufus hadn't gone berserk and sent him running. I suddenly realized with chilling clarity that our loyal old family pet had likely saved my life that night by sensing danger I was oblivious to and taking bold action. In the years since, when I tell the story, some people dismiss Rufus' behavior as just instinctive guard dog stuff. But I know in my heart that our lazy, gentle, foot-licking companion of nearly 15 years turned into a different animal entirely that night when threat lurked. I truly believe he was cognizant on some level of the jeopardy we were in and chose to transform into a ferocious defender. He knew that rickety door was about to give, and he wasn't about to let harm come to me. We had to put Rufus down a few years later when his health really deteriorated. Before the vet administered the final injection, I asked for a private moment with my loyal friend to say goodbye. Kneeling down, I hugged him and scratched that sweet spot behind his ears that always made his back leg thump blissfully. "Thanks for everything, buddy," I whispered. As a grown man now with a family of my own, I knew deep down that none of the blessings in my life would have been possible without him, and the bravery he showed that night long ago. Our old house has since been torn down, the whole block unrecognizable from what it once was. My family is scattered to various suburbs now. But the memory of that close call and my heroic hound who came through when it mattered most will stay fresh forever. Rufus may have just been a humble beagle, but he reached deep within himself and became a guardian lion when I needed one most. You never know what courage may be sparked when darkness looms, but holding fast to those glimpses of unexpected light will guide you through and illuminate graces unforeseen. I grew up in a large house that my parents had scrimped and saved for years to afford. Nestled at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac and backing up against woods, it was the kind of place my siblings and I could play for hours among the towering oaks in the backyard. Inside, there was plenty of space for each of us kids to have our own rooms. It even had a finished basement where we would gather for movie nights and birthday parties. But my favorite room was what we called the second living room. This room was off to the side on the first floor, connected to the main living area but still separate and cozy. It held an overstuffed floral sofa that I would curl up on to read for hours, lost in fictional worlds of adventure and mystery. Along one wall stood a worn easy chair where my dad would sip evening tea and listen to vinyl records crackling on the vintage turntable nearby. Coffee table in the center held framed family photos, my mom's coasters protecting it from mow rings. In today's terms, the second living room was basically a sunroom or informal family room. But as a child, it felt like my own private sanctuary within the already safe haven of home. I loved its faded Persian rug and mismatched decor that inspired my imagination more than the formal living room. Many evenings, I would doze off there after school, still clutching a book, comforted by the muffled sounds of my family bustling around the rest of the house. I was about 10 years old when something happened that shattered my sense of security within those beloved four walls. One chilly November morning, I awoke feeling vaguely ill and coughing. My throat burned and head throbbed as I slowly dressed to school and trudged downstairs, blanket trailing behind me like a cape. My mom felt my forehead, frowning at the clamminess. "I think you'd better stay home today, sweetie. Have some tea and rest up." Disappointed to miss class, but admittedly feeling lousy, I shuffled off to curl up in the second living room. My two older siblings left for school as I snuggled into the sagging couch, comforted by being in my special retreat. I must have dozed off pretty quickly, because the next thing I knew, I was startled awake by the clock chiming 10:30. Feeling a bit better after the nap, I now had a raging thirst from the fever. I decided to get a drink from the kitchen. The house was silent except for the whir of the radiators as I padded down the hall, expecting to be alone. Rounding the corner into the kitchen, I suddenly stopped short, blankets slipping from my fingers. There, rummaging through the cupboards, was a complete stranger, a disheveled middle-aged man in filthy clothing. We both froze, staring at each other. My child's mind went blank with confusion and terror. After a paralyzing moment, I unfroze and bolted back to my room, slamming the door shut and cowering in the corner behind my bed. Who was that man? How did he get into our house? Had he been hiding here the whole time? I was homesick. Hands shaking, I grabbed the phone off my nightstand and dialed my mom's office number, barely able to choke out what I had seen between panicked sobs. She gasped, quickly reassuring me that everything would be fine, that she was calling the police immediately to come check on the house. Overwhelmed with shock, I stayed huddled in my room until I had a car pull into the driveway about 10 minutes later. Peering out the window cautiously, I saw two police officers heading up the front steps. I crept out to meet them at the top of the stairs, blanket once again wrapped around me for security. The officers spoke gently to me, asking for details as I led them shakily through the house, paranoid that the stranger might jump out at us. But after a thorough sweep indoors and around the property, nothing seemed amiss. No sign of forced entry or a trespasser anywhere. The officers speculated that I must have been confused from the fever. My parents hurried home from work just after the police left, shocked that an intruder could have been lurking somewhere inside our haven. I could tell they didn't fully believe my story either, but were sympathetic to how vividly real it had seemed to me. After that day, we all remained on edge for weeks, triple-checking locks and looking over our shoulders more around the house. But gradually things seemed to return to normal. My health improved, holidays passed in a blur of family cheer, and my sense of safety slowly rebuilt itself over time. I began to doubt my own recollection of that terrifying encounter. Had it just been a fever dream or stress-induced hallucination? I decided to push the chilling memory out of my mind as much as possible. I refused to feel afraid in my own home. Years went by without incident. I entered high school, became consumed by friends and first romances. I spent less time tucked away reading in the second living room. My little sanctuary now seemed like just another corner of the house, rather than something special. But I still had a sentimental soft spot for it. Whenever I was home on breaks from college, I would gravitate to that old lumpy couch out of nostalgia. When I was 22, my parents finally decided to sell our family home to downsize to a condo now that the last of us kids was grown and gone. In the weeks before the open houses began, we worked to clean out and declutter the place, sorting through belongings accumulated over decades. My siblings and I picked through our childhood mementos in our old bedrooms, deciding what to keep or donate. I wandered the house in a bittersweet daze, flashes of memories coming from each corner and closet. On my final walkthrough, I went to the second living room last, running my hand over the orange floral upholstery and smiling silly. My gaze fell to the floor then, noticing for the first time the decorative fringe that ran along the bottom of the couch. Furrowing my brow, I bent down, sure I could see something shoved way back under the couch. Heart suddenly pounding, I got down on hands and knees and tentatively reached one arm into the dark, narrow gap beneath the sofa. My fingers brushed against plastic, still stretched out on the floor. I pulled with effort until an object finally slid out. It was a grimy Ziploc bag filled with trash and tattered remains of food wrappers. Shocked, I frantically felt under the sofa again, dragging out another bag, then another. A putrid scent hit my nostrils as more and more bags piled up on the carpet. At least 10 or 15 of all sizes. Garbage had been being stored under this couch for who knows how long. Disgusted, I sat back on my heels and tried to make sense of this bizarre discovery. I called my mom into the room to show her the bags. She was as bewildered as I was. Why store trash here in the house, under a couch? As we debated what to do, the doorbell rang unexpectedly. Poking my head out, I saw a police officer standing there. "Sorry to bother you, Mom. We received a call about a possible food hoarding situation here." Puzzled, my mom and I led him to the second living room, where we explained finding the bags under the sofa. His smile faded as he carefully took samples of some of the fallen debris for testing back at the lab. He became very serious then, asking if we had noticed any other odd incidents in the house over the years. The chilling memory from my childhood illness suddenly came flooding back. I described to the officer that strange encounter with the man in our kitchen so long ago. His brow furrowed in concern as he explained that characteristics of break-ins indicated someone may have been living here secretly back then. My mom's eyes widened in understanding. "He was never a hallucination," I whispered. "He was real." Forensics results eventually confirmed our fears. Fingerprints on the garbage bags matched a homeless man with a record of break-ins and squatting in vacant homes. He had likely slipped in through an overlooked door or window and remained undiscovered under the second living room couch for weeks, even years. That explained the odd encounter my 10-year-old self had stumbled upon. All this time, my childhood sanctuary had concealed a sinister presence. After that revelation, I felt a new unease within the home I had always considered my haven. But the furniture was soon cleared out, floors scrubbed spotless, and finally new owners moved in. The house deserved a fresh start, free from the chill of past invasions. As for me, the experience was unsettling, but also strangely cathartic. My long-held sense of security had proven misplaced, appended by human unpredictability. But now, I understood the world was complex in ways my childish outlook had failed to grasp. The veil had been lifted from my youthful trust, and sometimes seeing truth clearly, however painful, was the only way to let go and move forward.